Welcome to NYC Jewelry Week 2022. We're the co-founders. My name is JB Jones.
And I'm Bella Naiman.
And we're really excited to welcome you here for our 2022 virtual program on our official YouTube page. Please go hit subscribe so you know all the other programs that we're dropping here on YouTube this week. And head to our website at NYCJW22.com to see all the in-person programs we're doing in New York, as well as a full list of the virtual programs we're doing here.
We're really excited about this upcoming virtual program. If you have any questions or comments for the participants, please feel free to leave them in the chat. And even though it's not a live program, we will make sure that they get them. Thank you so much for joining us. Sit back and relax and have some fun. Bye.
Welcome, everybody. Really great to be here. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ming. I'm a journalist. I write about jewelry, and I'm here with Sabine Roemer. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having us in your home. I'm just going to do a brief intro for people who don't know, but Sabine Roemer is a jeweler and a master goldsmith. She found her vocation really early at age 15, which is really young, I think, but she said she did work experience at age 15, and she knew exactly what she wanted to do. And it led her to do an apprenticeship, which lasted about 3 or 4 years. And then she's only 18 at this point, and you're still very young, and then you went and traveled the world, as most young people do, and you went to places like Austria, Australia, Greece, and really interestingly, you went to different workshops and to see different techniques and how things were done and craft and how gold was being crafted. And then you went back to Germany, where you're from, and you went to Pforzheim Goldsmith and Watchmaking School, which is the world's oldest goldsmith and watchmaking school. You did your master's there, and at 24, graduated as the youngest female master goldsmith. And I guess at that point, because you'd already sort of traveled around, so then you went to Bond Street, cut your teeth at the best houses on Bond Street, also Paris and Place Vendôme. And then at 27, you started your own brand, taking all that knowledge, all that kind of classical training and putting it into your own pieces, working mainly with bespoke clients, making bespoke pieces. And then when you were 30, you got a taste of retail and had your own collection with Harrods. It was called Arabian Nights. We're going to show some pieces later, which are really interesting, and it really showcases your training, I think, in the detail. And then, interestingly, in 2015, you launched as what I call a fashion ready-to-wear brand called Atelier Romy, which is named after your daughter, which is lovely. And that's kind of the commercial side, if we say. So that's kind of a rapid-fire, brief intro to Sabine's career so far. And I guess I thought we'd start because we're here. So thank you for inviting us into your home. And we're going to go see your studio later. This is where you work, where you live. And for me, it's interesting because you really are an entrepreneurial person, because you're an entrepreneur because you've launched this ready-to-wear business, and it's really focused on commercial, fashion-led jewelry. But you have this, you have your own line, and you're really working with clients, like I said, to maybe create a story around a jewel, whether it's a stone or a theme. And they're two very different business models. And I guess as a designer, what I want to ask you is, how does that affect your creativity? Because one is, you're looking at fashion trends, and I think what I love about Atelier Romy is it's so cool, so on trend. I don't know if you hate me saying that, but I always say it's pieces that I didn't even know I wanted. And for me, as a luxury journalist, that's the definition of desirability. Like, it's like, wow, it's so cool, and I can see myself wearing that. but equally it really works with your high jewelry pieces. And I wear today I'm wearing these earrings, which are high jewelry, and there's a story about them. You can tell me about them later, but I think it works with your atelier. Yeah, with Atelier Roemer, and it's just it's interesting, and I don't know if you could just talk about how it affects your creativity.
Yeah, I think the main big parts or the differences between the brands is then with Sabine Roemer, the high jewelry line, I don't imagine a woman. I am going and falling in love with a stone or a story, and I go into my little cave workshop and just really see what's creatively coming out. Where I think with Atelier Roemer, it was, no, who actually is the woman who's going to wear it, and how she's going to wear it, how is her day to day, and that really affects the design aesthetics as well, that it's wearable, it's easy to stack. So if you have an earring and you want to wear it all day, you might want to, consider the weight. Then obviously you have to consider the price points in the end. So the collection we just launched is like an ear party, and there basically you can create your own stack. So we have charms and we have hoops, and you might want to wear nothing during the day, just a little hoop, but then you add them in the evening. So I feel it's something, and all the collections go together. So if you, for example, have the bamboo collection and then the classic Atelier Roemer, you don't have to reinvent your whole jewelry. You just add and mix them, and even mix colors. I'm a big believer in mixing gold, silver, rose, whatever works. So, and with the high jewelry, as I said, it's like, yes, I might have a big birthday celebration for a person, and I look at her style and really, I don't want to create, there's certain things of jewelry I would create for myself because I want to wear it. But if I see the person, how she looks, I just had this client, she's much more petite than me. Different style will suit her better, like long earrings, where I like sometimes big and chunky going this way. So you really do a bespoke piece for this person who wants to end up wearing the jewelry. So I think this is the main differences between high jewelry and ready to wear. Is it just needs to fit more people. Mm-hmm. Like I have this Athena coin necklace, and it's did in the pandemic because obviously we weren't all through a difficult time, and the Athena necklace for me was the embodying that this goddess comes in and helps us and puts her armor on and manage these difficult crises, and it's like a daily reminder for us to be strong. And she's obviously the patron of the arts as well, which I loved because it kind of embodies my two brands as well, what I am. I love the high jewelry and I love diamonds, but then you kind of want to dress it down with Atelier Roemer. So the diamonds and the San Marco necklace, it just goes together really nicely. And then the high jewelry obviously is either sometimes a stone inspires me. I found those ammonites, and I found them actually in Ida Oberstein, which is, Germany, landlocked. We all did our gemology classes there growing up, and very famous for the stone industry. And I found them there, and I'm like, we're far away from water, but ammonite was million years ago, was a water animal, right? So for me, that inspired me to show us actually, first of all, how small we are, because they're million years old, and that they're very far away from water. So that might change as well, to don't forget where you're coming from, your origin, but I'm kind of looking at the bigger picture as well. So, so I think it's a mix between inspiration by a person, which is the client, the stone, or those Paris earrings, which, when I went on the 5 a.m. train to Paris for the first meetings, and you're going onto the Eurostar, and it always obviously rains and it's dark in London. So these running raindrops
on the windshield.
On the windshield, you're
Eurostar.
going and you're trying to catch up on, drawings, or you sit there with a laptop and you just see those running along those screens. And I felt that was a really nice inspiration when I saw these stones that was really my story behind that.
Yeah, no, I love that story, and I just love the way it's something that I think about when I wear the jewelry, and someone might ask me, "Whoa, I love your earrings. Where are they from?" I've worn these on a red carpet event,
Yeah, in Venice.
and you get asked about it, and it's so nice to just say that there's a story behind it, and the designer was inspired when she take these 5 a.m. Eurostar trips to Paris, and the rain coming because of course you're leaving from London and it's raining. So, and I guess storytelling is very much a part of what you do. Is it translatable between a bespoke, is it translatable between a high jewelry brand and a commercial brand? Because stories really infuse what you do.
Yeah.
Is it both? Is it in both?
I find in both it's really hard actually to tell. That's why the videos and interviews is actually helping more to translate the stories, because if you do a shoot or you just put it on a plain canvas or online, I find it so hard, the storytelling. So the only way you can actually, with Atelier Roemer, is it's more of a lifestyle you create. So we've just been in LA, and to kind of just have this feel of which person it is. So in the ready-to-wear, sometimes it's a bit easier, where in the high jewelry it's more like written forms, or you actually have to speak and talk about it, because I think when you end up seeing them, you don't see the story, and I think the storytelling is really, really difficult. So that's, I think, these kind of interviews and story or talking about those pieces really brings it to life, but I think it's really difficult.
Okay. And can you tell me a bit why you love stories? Because I think it's a really interesting approach to the way you work.
Yeah, I think it started age 15 when I did this work experience, and I wanted to do something with my hands, right? So I come from a very small town and on the outskirts of the Black Forest, and we obviously never had the fashion we wanted to wear, so I ended up making it. And after a while, I was like, I really hate fabric. I'm like, it went somewhere, I couldn't really fix it. And then my mom, she worked in the architecture section, so we always rebuilding the houses, and so I got this very early, and I was quite good with my hands, so my mom always took me. And I'm very lucky, I come from Karlsruhe, which is close to Pforzheim, so we have these old school jewelers. We had a whole street of them. So my mom took me for my work experience, and we went to every jeweler and asked if they have a spot for me.
Right, okay.
And everyone was like, no, no, no. And then literally the last person, and he was, to this date, he was confused if I'm going to rock up on the Monday morning or my mother. I think she talked so much to him that he was like, yeah, I take, leave me alone, woman. So, and these 5 days really shaped me. I wasn't in love with jewelry either. It was really the craftsmanship that brought me into what I am today. I was sitting there and he explained the tools, and he was like, so do you know what you want to do? And you can maybe do a ring in this week, and then you can take it home. And literally 5 days, I'd made 6 pieces. And he was like, oh my God, you really have a talent. And he wouldn't advise me to go into this trade, because he's like, it's dying. Nobody wants to pay the extra amount that the person sits there and does the bespoke work. But he said, I've never seen this in all my career. And he kept my apprenticeship spot free for me. My mom and parents, they were actually supportive. They're like, just do 1 degree, just don't leave school directly. So I started with him. I did my apprenticeship with him. Won a scholarship because I was so fast and good in it. And I really found my vocation. And because it was a very small town, we had this old school. A person comes in, they pick a stone, we design, we do the whole process. We did the design part, and then I ended up crafting it, buying the materials, what I needed, or we melted down stuff. We had sometimes people, they brought all these old jewelries and we created something new from it. So it was really the old school workshops I actually probably don't know from London. I came to London and I was shocked. Because they're like, what do you want to do? Like rings, necklaces? Or do you want to be in the design department? Or do you want to be in the workshop? And I'm like I do everything. Why? And it gets split. And that's what I think I was very lucky to experience in all of my career. That I actually, or in Australia, in Greece, in Austria, they all have different techniques, and you really, granulation was one part. Then in Austria, they dip everything into an acid bath to bring out a different color of gold. In Australia, we did inlay work, or we set the stones from the back. So, and I think that all shaped of what I'm creating today.
Yeah, and I think that's why you probably are capable of doing two businesses that, like I said, are very different.
Yeah.
But also have a cohesive thread between both of them. You always talk about Atelier Roemer in the context of the high jewelry. So, and I guess that's the next thing that I wanted to ask you, because I feel like we live in this world where everyone has to kind of be their own brand, be their own business person. Having a business, having a startup is very part of the culture now. And you went and started your own, started Atelier Roemer in 2015.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, even though you've worked at different jewelry houses, you've become a businesswoman, and you've had to wear many hats. And I remember you telling me that you were sitting there wrapping boxes and writing handwritten notes, which you probably still do, right?
Yeah.
Because it's you just started the business from scratch. And could you just talk about what it's like running a business when you're a creative person? I mean, I think if I understand rightly about creative people, they just kind of want to be left alone in their studio. That's when you're happiest. Yeah. So how has it been running two businesses and two very different businesses?
Yeah, it was funny because after the Harrods launch with the high jewelry, I went into the same problem, I want to say now, because it was all of a sudden all the retail stores around the world, they were like, okay, you're launching in Harrods. Can we adapt your jewelry? Can you make it smaller? And everyone has different requirements. Or some was like, we really love green stones here. And I was like, with Sabine Roemer, I never wanted to do that. I create the art, and then you decided if you like it or not. And with Atelier Roemer, it's different. So you have price points. And it's kind of challenging in a different way. I was like, oh, it's not so creative, but it's creative differently that I would have never explored, like the Los Angeles shoot or a Christmas movie, to do, some pieces, and kind of really, that's a creative process too, doing a vision of a little movie or film, and really getting into the spirit of what is the lifestyle and how the girl's looking, that's, again, like I really like it natural. I don't want a lot of makeup. Most of the shots we do with a photographer, Susan Booth. She's German as well, and I love her that they just, it's a lot of skin, but it's just the jewelry shows. You don't need a lot. Like I always said, you can put everyone in jeans and a white T-shirt, and the jewelry shows who you are. It's your E dot on the eye, and it's the personality really can show what you like and make a statement. So obviously you can do this with clothes as well, but next day something else. The jewelry you can wear every day. So the differences on the creative part, I find it's very different because you have a lot of spreadsheets and obviously a lot of ideas of pricing. And if you do a mistake on one piece, and that's across 10,000 pieces, that's an expensive mistake you're doing, which you don't have in one high jewelry piece. So I've learned a lot of hard lessons, and it hasn't been easy because it was not my trade or not how I worked. So you really need to learn, and you fail and you do mistakes, but you have to learn from them. Now I have an amazing mentor as well, because I don't know it all. So, and he's helping me to do a product sheet. I was like, I've never done a product sheet. I just designed what I liked and I wanted to wear next summer. So, and that turns into the price category, and to kind of have, when somebody lands on the website, that it's because it's basically reflects a shop. So if you go to a shop, you have maybe the earrings and the rings and this, and it's on the website, it's the similar process. You land and you want to know what is happening, or where you get guided through the website.
Yes.
And that's a creative process as well, which I really enjoy. So,
okay.
Or on the photo shoots, to kind of be there, and it's like, no, let's try styling the jewelry different or put it together differently. So I think you can find a lot of creative aspects, and I really enjoy them. I always say Atelier Roemer for me is all the jewelry history I've experienced in the high jewelry, which is super expensive, to bring that to everyone.
Yeah.
The aesthetics, the making. So I do every master pattern myself, and then it goes into production afterwards. So, and that is really important to me, because then you get one prototype is basically the one first one, and then the company will just repeat it. But that first piece is made by me, and so I'm very precise and probably very detail oriented, that this is perfect before it goes out. And I think that's why, as you said as well, you can wear the high jewelry with the ready to wear and you don't notice what is what, just because both has the aesthetic of it.
Yeah, and I guess I should have mentioned this earlier, just so people have some context. But I mean, your high jewelry pieces can easily be upwards of £15,000, whereas for Atelier Romy, it can go from 50 to 500. Sorry, from 50 to 500 pounds. So it's two different contexts, and whereas your high jewelry has been worn on the red carpet, it's been worn at the Oscars by Morgan Freeman, it's been worn by Angelina Jolie on the red carpet. So these are, it's a different kind of animal, and then you thread that into your ready-to-wear line. But the pandemic, weirdly, was a kind of a game-changing moment for you, for Atelier Romy, you know, because it's only online, so you can't buy it.
And it was funny, because what I've known was trunk shows, meeting people, knowing that client loves my stuff. So hosts, when I'm in San Francisco or New York or even in Germany, they host a little other group of women and men and show me my work. So that's all I knew. And then the pandemic happened, and we were like, oh, now we have to be the online shop we always wanted to be. So it was life-changing in that, and I took over everything, Instagram, and then I have an amazing team, obviously, so it's not all me. And I think that's the other thing, you have to let go at some stage of things and kind of find your strength and find other people who complement you, because alone it's impossible. Yeah. So, and throughout the pandemic, we really learned how to be an online brand, I think, and that comes back to the storytelling. So we did videos, but then I wasn't allowed to do videos. We weren't allowed to meet. Right, so of course, I mean, one of my first supporters was Laura and Rid, and they just like, we are sitting in Paris or home alone, just send us some pictures. She was a model, he's a photographer, and I'm like, that really started and saved my day back then. So it was really special to see how supportive, and everyone believed in it and created beautiful content, which we then can communicate online.
So I thought we'd change tack a bit, because as a master goldsmith, I really want to talk about craft. And I was really fascinated to learn that you did 16 different subjects as part of your master's program. And I thought we'd talk about gold, which makes sense, because you're a master goldsmith. Maybe just, there's all different types of gold, and if you could just talk briefly about the properties. Why do you love working with gold? Like you said, when you were 15, it wasn't like you knew you wanted to be a goldsmith, but what was it about gold?
I felt it was, even when I was 15, and my boss at the time, he showed me this piece, and he was like, okay, now you make a ring out of it. And I was like, this is tin, it doesn't even look precious, right? And I think I kind of had to like, okay, this is strange. And then you solder it, and then it just comes slowly alive. And with the gold, obviously, when we go from gold carving and gold filing, all these golds have different properties. Obviously, they come out of the ground, and they are yellow gold. So done. Yellow gold is what we find in the ground. If we do it white, we're adding materials to it. And if we want to have rose gold, we're adding more copper to make it more rose. So, and obviously when you then work with them, you have to take different things in consideration. So obviously to me, yellow gold, which is the most beautiful to work with on the bench, because it's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's like the light's shining in, the sun's coming in, it's yellow. You work with it, you carve it, it's still yellow. You heat it up, all of a sudden it cools down, you still see the yellow. Where white, I say it looks like tin, you know, and then you start polishing it up and you're like, okay, good. It looks good. So white gold, for example, if you solder, you always see the solder lines. So every white gold you see out there, 100% is rhodium plated afterwards to hide those solder lines. So if you then work with white gold on wedding bands, for example, I always say use platinum, because that's out of the ground, white, you polish it, it will always stay white. So rose gold, I love rose gold personally because it's a softer yellow and it has a bit of pink tones in there. But because of the copper, it breathes, it's alive. And copper, you know, the copper roofs, they turn green. So when somebody says, oh, your rose gold tarnishes very quickly, I'm like, yes, it's a material, it's alive.
It's living.
Yeah, so, which I love the fact about it. And I even have some earrings, I made them actually in copper because the color you can't replicate in rose gold. And then you have the weight as well. So I have these big flower earrings, the orchid earrings. They are copper and white gold, so they're super light and they have this rose gold tint, but yes, they go a bit brown because it's alive. So so I think all these different gold have aspects and different weight, so you have to take this in consideration, especially when you do earrings, that it doesn't get too heavy because you want to end up wearing them, and you work differently with them.
So I thought I'd start with the yellow gold, because the sun and these earrings are inspired by LA, which is, you know, sun and palm trees and dream catcher. And maybe you could talk about the inspiration behind these and why you decided to use the gold that you did.
Yeah, I think, we were always, you know, from Chateau Marmont, and obviously I kind of partly felt like I lived there because I was constantly in Los Angeles, and it was kind of the city of dreams. And then Morgan Freeman, as you said earlier, wore my pieces to the Oscars. So it was very dear to me, and I was actually ending up trying to move there as well. And it was just these lush palm trees, and I found those green stones. Some I had to cut especially to kind of create it, and that's the beauty of high jewelry. You just do one, so you just go for it. And it was green and gold to reflect the sun, and just this beautiful combination, and to catch those dreams from all those stories in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and black. You use black gold in the Take a Bow earrings, actually. And then could you talk about why you chose black?
Yeah, I feel I really love black jewelry or black rhodium. It's what happens. In silver jewelry, it happens naturally. If you don't have the cover on top of silver, it just oxidizes and goes black. And in black gold, which obviously is again a coating on top, it doesn't exist black gold out of the ground. It's a black rhodium coating, and I love it because it has this antique feel to it. And these bow earrings was take a bow to the play on words of all, I think, my female energies around me. I think growing up with two brothers, dominant dad who just, you know, took me skiing and playing basketball, and then working in a workshop was full of men as well. So I felt the older I get, and now having two daughters for me, and learning with my female friends around me who probably are my biggest supporters and helping me to become the person I am today, I really wanted to take a bow to those women. And this was these bows, which then I love. I did one in white, and I was like, it's too bling, I wanted to have this understated look, and the white diamonds even show more in black. So I really like the contrast of that.
Yeah, I love the contrast in this piece. And I think it would, like you said, it would have been a totally different piece had it been in white.
Then you end up wearing it maybe just in the evening, but these you can rock up with a suit during the day and go for a lunch meeting. I just feel it's actually more versatile. Yeah. And has this antique touch to it.
Yeah,
that they've been around forever.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah.
And the rose gold ones, which I love because it's sort of based on a Chinese folklore. I think you were in Asia when you found the stones, right?
Yeah. And it was kind of the east meets west. And my favorite animal or spirit animal is monkey. So, obviously you have the god, and he was doing with the peaches, and the peaches are really they're the colors I found of the gemstones. So I thought it was a really nice story to put all those together and have them then in rose gold with the peaches. And then when you turn them around, you actually see the monkey.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah. And then this last one is white gold, which is really interesting that you were saying before. I didn't even know about the soldiering, and you really have to, you see it more in white gold. And I think this is one piece that we've actually gonna kind of pick apart a bit. But before we do, could you just talk a bit about why did you pick white gold and you paired it with pearls? And
it was the Reach for the Stars earrings, and I really fell in love with these yellow citrons. But again, working with the contrast of colors here, if I would have done it in yellow gold, for example, they would have disappeared, the stones in itself. And I wanted to use potentially yellow pearls, and gray pearls, so to kind of have this play of contrast of heavy crown setting, having the floating pearls around it. I guess I love really contrast of things, of polished and not polished, and shiny stones and cabochons maybe. So I really felt in the Reaching for the Stars the contrast between the pearls and the sparkling diamonds, and then you have the citron with the color, and that's why I chose white gold. And then I ended up doing gray shades of pearls in them. And yes, it was one of my favorite earrings, and they Salma Hayek ended up wearing it on the cover of the American InStyle. So that was very proud moment. Yes.
Yeah. And are you sketching these things out? Because like you said, you say like with the bow earrings, you thought about doing it in white gold. With the Reach for Your Stars, it was about maybe you had toyed with using yellow gold. Is it something that you see in the sketch? Is it something you... or is it kind of all in your mind already?
It's a funny one, because sometimes, yes, you have this idea and you sit there and then you maybe sketch it out, but not necessarily. I find always the best things is when it just happens. Like I remember even the camel ring I've done for the Arabian Nights, or the big feather bracelet I can show you later as well. The big feather bracelet is full of gold, and it has all these feathers around, and the idea was there, and I can show you this first sketch, and then it ended up completely different, and that happened on the bench. And it's so hard to explain this to someone who don't understand the jewelry making process, but I always refer to it's you're in a studio and they have an idea of a song, and then they go into the studio and then they tweak the music. And maybe even the lyrics if it doesn't sound right, and it's the same, it's all a process. And I feel that kind of probably disappears a little bit in those big companies, because you have, when I came to London, it's like a design studio and then a workshop and then a setter and then a polisher. And I was like, yeah, but how do they speak to each other? Everyone interprets their design. So I think a lot happens actually in the workshop. Or if you then put it on your ear, and I think that's a female thing as well, because we end up wearing it. If the earring is too heavy, you need to change the design. You can't just like, oh, I drew it like this, so we're just gonna go for it now. Or a ring, and if you can't shake hands anymore, you need to adjust it. So I think a lot of this process happens actually in the workshop. And with a feather bangle, I had this idea of one big feather cuff. And I did it, and I was like, it just doesn't seem right. And I had these feather earrings, and all of a sudden I did loads of feathers. And then on the bench, I literally placed them next to each other. And then I was like, okay, now you can't put your arm in anymore. So you needed a mechanism, and it's a quite cool mechanism. It's like folds up and down that you can actually put your arm in there. So, and this process happens.
You wouldn't have seen it
No,
before.
not on the technical drawings. The Reach for Stars is a bit different because it's very architectural. This was like precision on technical drawing, and then having the millimeters carved out, and then the stones, and that it's not too heavy, so that the weight is correct, and you can actually end up wearing it.
And I think you've told me that sometimes you even have to make your own tools to work with gold. If the existing tools don't work, you don't let your design just go. You make the tools to make it happen.
Yeah, I actually learned that in Australia. In Australia, I lived there for a year, and I did this further education, and it was all sponsored because I won the scholarship. And I was like, okay, drawing, okay, fine. You that's part as well, big part for me to illustrate it properly as well. But then on the other hand, you get sometimes stuck in the workshop because you have you bend the metal and there are certain tools, but all of a sudden you don't get the curve right, or even coming from the silversmithing techniques. Silversmithing techniques, it's like this big of a radius, right? So this tool won't work on a ring, this radius. So in the end, we just had to, and I'm still doing it, you create your own tools. Yeah. Or you want to shape a flower. You can't buy a flower positive and negative where you just carve the flowers into it. So you create your own ones. Yeah.
We've kind of covered the gamut of gold: yellow, black, rose, white. Could you talk about Atelier Roemer, which is gold plated, 9-karat gold? Yeah. Could you just explain what that means? Is it still precious?
Yeah, I find it's very confusing, even for every client. And I try to do in the description as much as possible, because there's a lot of gold plating jewelry out there. And then they're like, why is this so much cheaper than yours? And I was like, well, because there's normally brass underneath, brass or very cheap base metals. And we are a fine jewelry brand, means we're using only fine materials. We don't use plastic, we don't use brass, only fine materials, which means we use sterling silver, gold, and gold plating is vermeil, most of them, which means it has to be above 2.3 micron. Which is, again, what does that mean? It means it's 2 to 3 times more livable with everything you do. Like a normal plating is 1, and we have 2 to 3 times. Okay. But some pieces are only 1 plated, but it reflects in the price. Because if you have this necklace, for example, it's the San Marco necklace, and it's plated once. If we plate it 3 times, it would be 3 times the price. Because gold, and especially the surf it has to cover, it's much more expensive. So we always put it in the description. We try to be, we are transparent. It's just a lot of people don't either read description properly, and I always want you to challenge as well all the brands to actually look what's written in there. Because gold plate is not gold plated. Gold earrings doesn't mean it's gold. It means it might have the gold color, but there might not be any gold in there. So our pieces, and obviously coming from the high jewelry, it needed to be fine. For me, there was no questions about it. I couldn't just start making gold earrings or brass pieces where I was like, I can't put my name to it. So it's all fine jewelry, but if some comes off easier than others, it's probably because it's plated versus vermeil. And we have a filter as well where you can see which one is sterling silver, gold, and we even have black rhodium. Okay. So the difference is between black gold or black silver. It's the rhodium on top. Mm-hmm. So sterling silver, which I mentioned earlier, can be oxidized and then it turns black. That's a natural process. Our sterling silver jewelry is rhodium plated, like every white gold jewelry out there, so it doesn't tarnish. It stays white over time, and you can wear it every day. Like I wear mine pieces, Atelier Roemer, they don't go black or anything like that because of the white rhodium on top. Okay. So this white rhodium exists in many colors, even in blue, which I think is quite cool. And this black rhodium is on top of sterling silver. So we have the leopard ring, which is one of our hero pieces. We have it in silver, which is then rhodium plated in white. We have it in black, which is rhodium plated in black. And we have it in vermeil, which is silver 3 times plated in yellow gold.
Right, okay.
So they're all, but only fine materials. And then we have a little range, which is mostly earrings because it's small and you can still afford it. It's 9 karat. So these are solid 9 karat. And obviously it has a different color. It's a 9 karat gold. It's much less, I would say shiny, but some people like it. I mean, especially my mom, she doesn't like much shiny, but she likes the gold color. Yeah. So it's a bit dulled down because there's only 333 out of 1,000 is gold. So the rest is substituted with other things. Okay. So it's 333% out of 1,000 is gold, and then the rest makes it that you can wear it every day. Okay. Where in the high jewelry, 18 karat is 750 out of 1,000
Right.
is real gold. And then the rest is you do the color, for example, copper and rose gold, or palladium materials to make gold, white gold. So obviously the lower you go in white gold, the more white it will be, because the yellow will disappear.
Right. Okay.
So sometimes white gold jewelry in 14 karat can be more white than 18 karat. And therefore they plate it with white rhodium, because it is still a yellow tint to it.
Right. Okay. Right. And these Athena necklace, also, what's the plating on this? And maybe talk about the story, because I love the story, which ties into what you do, whether it's for Sabine Roemer or for Atelier Roemer.
Yeah, I find we kind of, like, I think in Atelier Roemer, I wanted to have all the things I've learned and what I love about the high jewelry and really put it into a ready-to-wear collection. And with the high jewelry, obviously, it's the stories. I always say, if you get the ring from your grandmother, who she wore every day, it has such an impact as opposed to getting the handbag and, you know, it falls apart. And you're like, it's a bit tricky. So with jewelry, it really tells those stories. And in the pandemic, it was 2020, and everything was like scared probably as well. What's happening? It's unusual. So this goddess Athena really stood out for me. And, you know, there was a lot of coin designs out there. I mean, they do it for centuries. It's not like reinventing, right? But again, like, I felt like I wanted to capture all those historical moments, even in jewelry making, right? And tell our own story, and maybe probably even make it more wearable or easier to wear. So the Athena for me was, I wanted a medal, I wanted a coin, but with a story. And that was Athena, the goddess, for me. And with another hero piece, which we have in all those three colors, is the leopard piece. And the leopard, from the times they're dyeing leopards, they're doing snakes. Again, like, I'm just doing these iconic pieces in Atelier Roemer, which everyone's using anyway for years and years and years. But adapt the design that it's easy to wear. So for example, as a small brand, we always had problems with rings. There is 1 millimeter is one ring size. So I designed the leopard ring open. So you can get it over the knuckles and it still sits tight at the bottom of the ring. You can adjust a size or two easily by yourself. So it was more versatile, and it felt that you still have the story of Leopard 1300, which ties in to that we are actually a fine jewelry brand. Because in London, you have a hallmark, and you have them across the UK, like Birmingham, for example, has a tower, and London has a leopard. So as soon as it's real fine jewelry, you get a leopard. And it's a hallmark, and that was the king in 1300 who started to try to find a legal way of all this gold jewelry and the fine gold jewelry, because just because it has gold color doesn't mean it's gold. Right. So he started to do this hallmark, which in this country you need to send to an assay office. And when it's real and it's in London, it's the leopard. So that's why we call this collection the Leopard 1300, to tie in the story and actually make it obvious that we are a fine jewelry brand.
Yeah, and going from wearable pieces, we've seen your work has moved a bit to really wearable pieces. You did this gold corset, with which Angelina Jolie wore on the red carpet. And if you could just talk a bit about that, because it's a completely different scale, completely different dimension. But maybe I'm wrong, but sort of using all the skills that you've always used anyways. But so maybe just talk about how it came about.
Yeah, it's funny because people love to put people into boxes, right? So you make jewelry, so you can only make jewelry. But as you learned, I've made my master in gold and silver smithing. And they're like, what does that mean? I was like, gold smithing is smaller items, meaning if it's platinum or silver, it's under the category goldsmithing, right? And silversmithing is bigger items. It doesn't mean you just use silver, but it's candlesticks and bowls, and it's a different arm power. I remember when I started it, I had this big guy, Sevan, and I was like, can I hold the metal and you just be the guy with a hammer? And I molded into the way how I wanted. And he was like, yeah, okay, with a big beard. And I'm like, okay, cool. And these, it is very different skill, like physically even. So, and then obviously I had another amazing mentor who showed me to do that in clay then, instead of like chiseling out metal pieces like this, which I used a lot with Nelson Mandela, because with Nelson, when I met him, or Madiba, how we call him, when I met him, it was very hard for me to create a very blinked out jewelry piece, which people just perceive maybe as a materialistic item. So I was like, I really want to capture your story. And with Mandela, it was for me more obvious to create a jewelry art as opposed to a jewelry piece. So with him, I kind of explored really the sterling silver, hammering and silversmithing, and creating every year for his birthday. We created, a sculpture this size, a sculpture this size. And coming back to Angelina, it was natural to me, but everyone was like, oh, you're doing corsets now. And I was like, it's natural to me to solder metal together. It's natural to me to carve it and file it and turn it into shape. It doesn't matter if it's this size or if it's this size. The tricky ones was because you can't buy the tools, so you end up making your own tools. And the corsets are all soft, so you can't really. So I had a one-on-one copy from her body where I could have as reference, but you can't take metal and hammer it against it. So you need metal support that you can hammer against metal. So you end up making your own tools or finding new ways. And then we did it. Obviously, we didn't want it to tarnish. So we plated again in gold and put an anti-tarnish coat on it. Yeah, most of those baths, which, I don't know if you know how it works, but it's in the plating baths, there's basically liquid gold in the bath. And then you put a plus and a minus onto the metal, and the other one is the minus, and then you dip it into this bath, and then the gold gets attracted onto the piece, whatever you put in.
Right.
So they had 2 liters. So we were like, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do this? So we had to create this bigger box to kind of do these platings. So it's natural to me. Obviously, the industry and the trade kind of had hurdles to go over there and kind of create bigger pieces. But that's why I love exploring and I love to challenge myself. So, and I think that's where I'm going into the next direction as well. I want to create bigger pieces and just challenging myself, because it's great to do a camel that size, but to kind of have it blown up, and it's another challenge where you then maybe work with clay, for example. So, and when you create clay, all of a sudden it just falls apart. So I had this amazing other mentor who helped me figuring it out. And so you build like a metal cage first, and then you put the clay that it doesn't collapse the whole thing. And I worked on this face of Nelson Mandela, and what I realized, yes, it's hard to, obviously that's a skill set, right? If the person looks like the person who you want to embody. But what I felt was actually easier is in metal to carve a face or something out of metal. If you make a mistake, and it's like marble, you chisel something too far away, you can't just add it. So all of a sudden I was in this clay workshop and I was like, oh, the nose is not straight, You're like,
slap on some work.
Yeah, and it felt, it was a really easy medium for me after being in jewelry for so long. So I feel, these days we are creators. So if you give me paint to paint, or if I do sculptures, or if I do jewelry, yes, maybe everyone knows me through jewelry, but it doesn't mean I can't do sculptures. I actually find it easier.
Right, okay.
Yeah, because of the process and what's behind there. So you have, as I said, clay, and if you do mistakes, you can adjust it right there. Where when you do this in metal or you break a stone, then that's it. Mm-hmm. So it's so intricate and difficult, the jewelry making, that, and after doing this, nearly 28 years now, I feel there's so much more to explore, and maybe even easier. Even my hands work easier in other
Yeah.
materials.
Yeah. So I guess that leads me to ask you, from 15, you knew exactly what you wanted to do. You have a high jewelry brand. You have a kind of a tech entrepreneur, if I can say that, as a fashion ready to wear line. And now exploring larger scale work, whether it's sculpture or clay. Do you have a vision of where you want to go with your work?
I mean, I think always the craft is for me my drive, like and probably my quick boredom, because I get bored very quickly. That's why I don't necessarily like collections in high jewelry either. I don't like matching. I don't like to do the same thing either. Like there's so many jewelry brands they're known for their style, which is great, but on the other hand, they never develop either. Like I did camels and feathers, but now my superwoman rings are very architectural and very sharp lines. So I like to explore more where this goes and the high jewelry goes, obviously, because I love doing it. Atelier Romy, I find it so inspirational for me to create actually a brand versus art. Mm-hmm. But then obviously what my little challenge and secret passion is sculptures and painting, and really explore again what else my hands can create. I mean, I always painted. I had an exhibition when I was 16, so it's not out of context either. But I think really showcasing the artistic side, and just, as I always say, just going in the workshop and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of love that thread that it's just with your hands, and it's what you've always done. So we'll be really interested to see where your work takes you. I'm always really fascinated because I just see that, I think it's kind of a dying thing, with tech and we're on our phones, and using your hands is it should be celebrated more. So it's exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sabine, especially for inviting us into your home. It's been really great to chat.
Thank you, Ming, for coming and making this happen. Thank you.